Hey Han, I'm Chloe and this is the Straddle Invert or chopper tutorial. My mission here is to share my passion for pole dancing and make pole dancing easy to learn and accessible. This is the 5th video of the intermediate pole trick tutorial series. In order to maximize your training out of all the videos, I highly recommend you to start from the very first video of this playlist, as the tricks will be a progression of the video before. The straddle invert or the chopper is one of the staple moves of intermediate pole tricks. Your prerequisite for this one is going to be your ankle grab, your half straddle, and also your straddle up. So please make sure you finish all those videos before trying this one. We'll be going through both spinning forwards, spinning backwards on a static pole, and also progressions and regressions of our invert. This video is mirrored for your ease of learning. I'll have a red wristband on my right wrist and my right ankle to indicate the right side of my body if you do get confused of the directions. This trick tutorial is created for you for information and educational purposes only, and for you to enjoy learning pole dancing from the comfort of your own home. Please participate at your own risk and don't work beyond your capability, and seek help or spotting when necessary. For any health concerns, please make sure you seek professional medical advice. Please make sure you warm up your body before you start this trick. I have a warm-up playlist depending on your level under each playlist so that you can warm up before you do this trick. If you enjoy this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up so that I know to create more of these kinds of videos, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet so you are notified every single time I upload a video. If you're looking to further your pole journey and combining tricks and dance together, then consider subscribing to my online learning platform, Pole Art Vault, where we put tricks and dance together into a routine and learn an entire combo plus dance to a song. If you're looking for information, you can find the link in the description. Alrighty, without further ado, let's go upside down. Alrighty, now let's go through some conditioning. Now, just to preface this, I am not going to be repeating the same conditioning that we've gone through our intermediate pole trick tutorial series, which is going to be especially beneficial for this trick as well. Now, if you do need a reference for the conditioning, please make sure that you've watched essentially every single video before the intermediate pole trick tutorial series. So your ankle grab, straddle up, and also your half straddle as well. So in addition to all of the other conditioning that we've been working on, which make sure that you work on them, we're gonna add a little bit more in your conditioning repertoire today. Now, I've got 7 conditioning exercises for you today. Now, we're starting off on the floor. Let's go through our straddle on the floor. Now, this is going to help you develop our nice straddle legs, so squeezing those knees, nice leg lines, and also our core. That's going to be very important when we're starting to work on our straddles. So coming down onto the floor, just ensuring that you've got an ample space around your legs so that you don't kick sort of any furniture when you come into a straddle. So we're lying down onto the floor. Now from there, think about tucking your tailbone in, and if you have a very bendy back or maybe a curved back, then think about tucking in and engaging your core, 0 space underneath your back and the floor. From there, we're getting our leg out into a straddle position. Now when you're in your straddle position, make sure you're squeezing through your knees, so think about squeezing your quads, and also pointing your toes and from your ankle as well. Now, we're just gonna do some gentle warm up through our straddle. So think about just bringing your legs side to side. Remember that we're still squeezing those legs. We're gonna warm up your straddle legs. Now, once you start to get your legs side to side, if it helps you, use your hands to kind of press them down onto the floor. We're gonna think about almost rowing a kayak with your legs. So think about your legs as those kayak paddles. To be honest with you, I've never kayaked before, so I don't know what it feels like. But This is how I almost imagine what it's like to kayak. So think about rowing that kayak. We're just going to go one leg at a time, circle, and then circle the other leg. Now, when you're circling your leg, just make sure that you are still pressing those knees down into the floor. And remember, we're still engaging through the core. So try not to arch your back here. We're still tucking that tailbone in, engaging your core. No gap between your back and the floor. Perfect. Beautiful. Now, there's your first exercise. Now let's get into our next one. Now for the next one, we're gonna start with you working on that core even more. So once you bring your leg out, you're going to use your leg momentum to sweep up and then come into a straddle. And then we're gonna lie back down onto the floor as you lift both of your toes up into the ceiling. So we're always starting with toes facing directly up into the ceiling. Use your core. If you don't need any momentum, you can probably just use this no momentum and then just whack your legs out into a straddle. And then engaging back and then coming back down. Now initially, obviously, if you need that momentum, then feel free to generate a little bit more momentum through your toes. Otherwise, if you feel like your core is quite strong and you're able to just lift hands down into a straddle, control that down, and then lift your toes up, go ahead and do that. The harder, the better for you. And obviously you can really work through your engagement and get that really juicy conditioning going on. Now let's try 5 of these. So you're gonna control it up again. If you need to use your hands, go ahead. 5, 4. And when you're coming into straddle, try to hunch here. Keep your back nice and flat if you can. 3, back flat. 2, and last one. Whew. Well done. Alrighty, now let's get into our next conditioning. We're going to do our straddle leg lifts. So you can see that I've got my 2 blocks stacked here. This is your option for those that need a regression. So we're starting off without the blocks first, so let's just see how we go without them. We're starting in a nice and comfortable straddle position. Now once we come into a straddle, both hands come onto one side, so one hand goes behind the quad and the other one in front. Now try keeping your posture nice and upright, so try not to arch your back too much, nor hunch. Think about sitting on your sit bones, it's just the sharpest part of just right next to your cookie. And keeping your back nice and flat. So think about getting your head nice and tall. Now press the floor with both of your hands, point your toes, think about squeezing your quads first, then you're going to lift that leg up. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, you might not be able to lift off your legs, and that is totally fine. These are supposed to be very, very tricky. So if you can lift like literally a millimeter, that is fine. Now, for those that cannot lift their legs up whatsoever, this is your time. You're going to sit on your blocks. Now, most commonly what happens if you're trying to leg lift is that I see a lot of people sort of like hunching and then sort of like doing one of these and trying to lift as high as you can, but we're trying to work on the quality, not the quantity. So if you're struggling to lift even a millimeter, try sitting on your blocks here. Now, what happens if you learn incorrect technique is that you end up not really using your legs anymore, and you end up using your back or your shoulders a little bit more through lifting your legs up. So let's really work on the quality of our movements. Now, once you sit on your block, this is gonna enable you to switch on your quads and your hips even better, which in the long run, you're going to get way better straddles with very nice posture. So let's sit on the blocks, or either you can sit on a chair as well. So once you come into your straddle again, sitting on your blocks or your chair if you need them, grab your block or just press the block down into the floor and try lifting your leg up. And that should be way easier to lift your leg up then. So we're going to leg lift 8 on each side. If your quads are cramping, you're definitely doing it right. And 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, we're almost there. 1, well done. All right, shake your quad off. Wow, that's hard, isn't it? That is a lot. All right, now I'm gonna do this without the block now so that you can see the progression version. Now, the other thing you can also do is to, if you want to ensure that your back is flat, you can lean against the pole to make sure that your back is flat and you're not sort of like lifting off like this. So I make sure that my shoulder is flat onto the pole. All right, let's try on the other side. And 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, almost there, 3, 2, and 1. Well done. All right, shake your quad off. That was a lot, wasn't it? Well done. Alrighty, now let's get into our next conditioning, which is our push-ups. Now with our push-ups, our form is extremely important. So make sure that you've got a mirror next to you or something so that you can see yourself and to correct your posture if needed. Now we're starting in our plank position or a plank with your knees down on the floor. This is totally up to you, and this is really going to be dependent on where you are in your journey in terms of your strength and conditioning as well. Now, one thing you really want to note is that from all the way from your shoulder to your hip to your knee should be in one correct line. Commonly what happens in a push-up is that hips are a little bit high. You're not pressing your hip down into the floor. So ensure that you're pressing your hips down as you tuck your tailbone in, really engaging through that core. Now from there, hands are stacking underneath the shoulders and think about kicking your ankle towards your booty if you are on your knees. Now, if you are on your toes, then remember that you want to tuck your tailbone in again, really engaging through your core, and your hands should be stacked underneath your whole entire body straight. Now from here, we're going to do a few push-ups. So again, this is where I want you to start learning your body and your ability. If you feel like it's getting way too much, then you can just do maybe like 3 to 4. And if you feel like you're quite strong, feel free to do a little bit more. And remember that every single training session, you can keep adding a little bit more to your reps. All right, so we're just going to do 5 for today. So choose your own adventure. You can either come onto your toes or your knees. Let's do this. Now, in order to do your push-ups, just make sure that you're choosing a relatively not too hard of an option, because I want you to make sure you're going all the way down to your chest so that you're able to squeeze through your shoulder blades. So you're not just kind of like doing push-ups where you're just going halfway and then pushing back up. I want you to really work on that quality of each push-up. So if you need to come onto your knees, you come onto your knees. All right, tuck that tailbone in and squeeze your shoulder blades together as you come down. Make sure you're pressing your hip down. And 4, and 3, and 2. Make sure you're squeezing your shoulder blades. Last one. Well done. Now our next conditioning is going to be our reverse plank pull-ins using the pole. This is gonna help you develop the muscles through your bicep, your shoulders, and your chest to make sure that you can really pull through when you're doing your inverts. So we're starting in a reverse plank. So make sure that from your knee to your hip to your chest is in one line. Now from here, we're going to use our arms to pull ourselves up slightly until our chest is right at our hands, and then we're going to drop back down. Just pull, and then pull back down. Now, as you can see, when I'm pulling, I'm feeling a lot of engagement through my pecs, so my chest. I'm using my biceps to pull. My forearms obviously are working, and also my shoulders as well. So when I'm pulling, I want to ensure that I feel a lot of pull, not just through my chest, but also through my shoulders when I pull the pole back. Now, the other thing you want to note is when you're pulling, try not to pull your shoulders up, because the more you pull your shoulders up, you're actually not engaging your shoulders as much as it should be. So you're going to end up using your traps more than the rest of your body, and you want to make sure that you're balanced in terms of your strength and where your body is working. So just make sure that you're not pulling your shoulders up. Think about dropping those shoulders down and then pulling it slightly back as you pull through. So we're gonna do, let's try 3 more of these, so 5 in total. So hands nice and straight, knee to your hip, to your shoulders in one line. We're really engaging through the core, and pull. Squeeze the shoulder blades together, drop it back down, and 2, squeeze the shoulder blades, and last one, squeeze. Well done. Now the next one is a froggy tuck from an ankle grab. So we're coming into an ankle grab. From there, we're sliding both of our ankles down, coming into a froggy tuck, then tipping down very, very slowly. So we're starting off in an ankle grab, inside armpit onto the pole, neck height, outside and at cheek height. Pull the pole out of the ceiling, kicking your outside leg up, nice and high, sliding it up. Make sure that you get your shelf onto the pole, looking down to the floor. From there, you're going to get your inside leg down, then outside leg down, into a froggy tuck, ankle to bum, controlling it down. Well done. Now, if you can, maybe try 2 or 3 of these each side. So let's try it on the other side. I'm gonna try it at a different angle this time so that you can see what my shelf is doing here and tipping over. So inside armpit onto the pole, outside hand up. Make sure that it's at cheek height. Outside ankle comes onto the pole. Inside leg goes behind. You're gonna pull the pole out of the ceiling, getting your pole into your shelf. So just make sure that you maneuver yourself so that the pole is sitting in right in your shelf. Inside leg comes down to shoulder height, to knee to shoulder. Outside leg comes down, looking down. Then controlling it down at your best ability. Well done. So these are your froggy tucks on each side from an ankle grab. So make sure that you do a few of these each session. Now the next one is our froggy tuck straight from the floor. So we've just done our froggy tucks from an ankle grab, but this time around, we're going to practice kicking up into it. So once you get your inside armpit onto the pole, outside hand comes on top again. This time, think about pulling the pole out of the ceiling. We're stepping in with our inside leg and lifting both of our legs up and hips nice and high into a froggy position. So once you come in position, remember, always identify which one's your inside and outside before you get into the move. Otherwise, honestly, nothing makes sense when you're upside down. So once you step with your inside leg, which is my right leg, because my right armpit is onto the pole, then I'm going to step, kick my legs up and hips nice and high, then controlling it down. Well done. Now, if you feel like your hips are still quite low in that position, make sure you keep working from an ankle grab, because that's gonna help you really develop the muscles that you need to be able to get to that position and hold it as well. Let's try it on the other side. So I'm stepping in with my left leg this time. Both legs come up, ankle to bum. And controlling it down. Well done. So there is your conditioning mainly through the legs and the core. Now again, remember to keep working on your conditioning. I cannot reiterate this enough, that these conditioning exercises, they can be alternated, and I want you to make sure that you're working through every part of your body. So that includes the pull strength for your inverts. It includes your chest. It includes your bicep, your shoulders. And a lot of that is covered in our ankle grab tutorial in the conditioning section. So make sure you check that out. Alrighty, now let's get into our straddle invert or chopper. This is what a straddle invert looks like. Alrighty, now let's get into different entries of a straddle on a static pole first. Now, with your entry, we are going to go through our ankle grab, then into a half straddle, then into a full straddle. So again, if you haven't watched the ankle grab nor the half straddle tutorial, this is your time. Make sure you watch that first. Now, we're starting in an ankle grab. So getting your inside armpit onto the pole, outside and on top into a stronghold grip. From there, you're going to look towards the top of the pole and kicking your outside ankle onto the pole, pressing your legs up and your hips up. You're going to get your shelf onto the pole. Then from there, inside leg comes down into a half straddle. From there, start extending your outside leg a little bit more, then you're fully into your straddle. To come out, you're just slowly dropping your legs down and coming back down onto the floor. Well done. Now, again, if you are still working on them, don't worry too much. There's a ton of conditioning exercises that you can pick from this trick tutorial, that was really hard to say, and also our other trick tutorials as well, so make sure you watch them. So let's try the straddle on the other side, and this time around, we are going to kick up into our straddle. So we're going to step in with the inside leg, always step in with your inside leg, and you can either tuck both of your knees towards your shoulder into a froggy tuck first, then opening into a straddle, or you can do one leg straight and then bend your other leg into a straddle as well. So this is really up to you and what your preference is in terms of your entry. And again, it depends on where you are in terms of your level as well. Ultimately, most people prefer to be able to do a straight leg invert, which is the hardest version of your invert, which both of your legs are straight, but we'll work towards that. Now, with your invert, if you are to do a froggy tuck, then once you step in with your inside leg, you're going to tuck both of your knees into a full straddle. Or you can bend your outside leg and keep your inside leg straight into a straddle as well. So I'm going to bend through my outside leg, then come into a full straddle as well. Well done. And again, if you obviously feel like you can come into both of your straight legs into a full straddle as well. Well done. Alrighty, now that I put my pole on spin, let's learn how to do our straddle invert or chopper, spinning forward and backwards. So our technique is going to be slightly different from how we do it on static. So this time around, instead of starting really close to the pole, we're standing slightly away from the pole. Now make sure you're standing not exactly next to the pole, but slightly away and slightly backwards. From there, we're grabbing the pole with both of our hands, just around inside hand neck height, outside hand cheek height. We're stepping in with our inside leg and kicking our outside leg backwards as if you're doing a little horsey kick. Now, when you're generating that momentum through your legs, just make sure that you don't do too much. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up spinning a lot. So So make sure that you're just doing a little bit, unless your pole's not super spinny. Again, this is really gonna depend on how spinny your pole is. So I'm gonna grab the pole with both of my hands, stepping in with my inside leg, tucking my knee towards my shoulder, and coming into a full invert. Knees bent again, then controlling it down. Well done. Now let's try this on the other side, but this time around, I'm going to teach you how to spin backwards, which is usually the one that feels a little bit strange when you're doing it initially, but we'll get there. Now this time around, you're going to bring your outside leg in front and not backwards. Now once you step your outside leg forward, you're going to kick your leg forward this time and not backwards. So think about generating the momentum, your leg forward, and then that way you're able to tip backwards and kick, lean back. So from here, I'm stepping with my inside leg next to the pole, kick your leg forward, tuck your knee towards your shoulder, and then all the way into a straddle. Well done! And always remember that you can keep your outside leg bent, inside leg straight if you'd like to work on that, or obviously both legs straight as well. So that's both spinning forward and backwards on both sides. Well done. Now let's go through some tips and common mistakes. Now the first one is that you haven't watched the tutorials from before. Remember that this intermediate pole trick tutorial series is created for you so that you can progressively work on the tricks, and these are formatted so that you are doing the tricks from the easiest and then progressively getting harder. Now the first chunk of this series is going to be super crucial on your invert journey, so please make sure that you've watched those trick tutorial series if you feel like you're not getting that trick quite right. Now the second tip is that you are not pressing your hips high enough in your invert. Now when you're doing your inverts, you want to ensure that your hips are nice and high, so remember that you can always work your way up from an ankle grab, then doing your kick up once you feel comfortable to press your hips nice and high enough when you're doing your inverts. Now, the reason why you want to make sure that your hips are high and when you're doing your straddle invert is because that even if you're able to hold your straddle in this position, in the future, when we're starting to work on tricks like your outside leg hang or Gemini, your hips have to be very high in order to make that transition really seamless. Remember that if you put in all the hard work now, that the conditioning and everything is gonna pay off really well. So please make sure you keep working on really good technique earlier in your pole journey rather than later when you start working on really bad habits. One, cause of injury. Second of all, tricks just don't look as nice as well. Now, speaking of your hips high, let's talk about our head positioning. Now, this is a very common thing when it comes to inverts, is that you're not looking down to the floor. Very common one is when you're coming into an invert, I see a lot of inverts looking towards your hand or the ceiling. Now, I totally understand that. When you're looking down to the floor, it feels a little bit scary, maybe because you can see where the floor is, and your safe space is looking at your hands to ensure that your hands are staying on the pole. Now, what looking up to the ceiling does is that it'll start to hunch your back. You're gonna start rounding your back, meaning that your hips are starting to naturally drop. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm in my invert, I'm looking up. You can see that as soon as I look up, that my hips are naturally going to drop, which means that you're not gonna get any shelf grip anymore when you are in your invert. So make sure that when you're doing your inverts, that you are always looking down to the floor And this is gonna help you hold that back, that flat back, and also make your inverts look very pretty as well, rather than looking up. Now, speaking of our head, let's talk about our spine. This is another part of it where your hips start to drop. So naturally, what your body does is, let's say for example, I'm looking up towards the ceiling, and this is me being upside down in my invert, is that your back is naturally going to round because you're looking down. I mean, it's going to be quite rare of an instance when you're like looking down and your back is flat, because naturally you're not going to just pop your head forward. You're gonna look down and round your back at the same time. So your head looking down to the floor and your spine is going to naturally happen at the same time. And this is why it's very, very important to look down to the floor and keep that neutral spine. So just make sure that you keep working on that. And remember, I always think almost like an upside down bodybuilder, where you're grabbing the pole with both of your hands in front of your cookie and you're pressing your chest forward and then pulling your shoulders down to the floor. So you're like a bodybuilder. So think about doing that when you're doing your inverts, and that's going to make your invert look very, very nice. Now, let's get into our next tip, which is the shelf grip that I just briefly mentioned. Now, the grip points for your inverts are both of your hands and your shelf. Now, a lot of the times people think that inverts are just your hands, but actually you use your shelf grip, which is going to help you with getting this pole trick as well. That means that you don't have to rely on just your hands, and you're gonna get an extra grip point, which is actually gonna be much, much easier. So if you've got any material interfering with your shelf or your side here, make sure you pull it down, because that's gonna also help you with the grip. And remember that if you're struggling to get the pole into your shelf, it might be because you're not pushing your chest forward enough. So just make sure you keep working on trying not to round your back, pulling the shoulders down and back, and making sure that you get that pole into your shelf. And remember, you can always work your inverts from your ankle grab. You come into your ankle grab, get that pole right into your shelf, upside down bodybuilder, look down to the floor, inside leg down, outside leg down, then into your invert. Cool. Now let's get into our next tip or common mistake, is the hand grip and the body grip. Now remember that when you're doing pole dancing, you do not have to always rely on just bare hands. You can always rely on grip aid. I usually use Grip Tonight on my hands or dry hands, and I've linked all the products in the description so that you can have a look at the products that I use. I also have been really enjoying dancing dust lately. So I usually use Make Me Dusty on my hands and Make Me Dewy on my body. Remember that everyone has different skin types. So if you do have sweaty hands, use something chalky. And if you've got really dry hands or dry skin, then use something tacky so that you can counteract whatever you've got on your skin. Then grip aid makes such a big difference. So please make sure you invest in that. And that's gonna help you a lot in your pole journey. Now, if you still struggle with really bad sweat, or if you have hyperhidrosis, then you might want to invest into sticky leggings or even sticky gloves. I really love Superfly Honey. They are amazing product, and that would help you a lot with grip. So make sure you invest in the right product and also grip aid as well. Now let's talk about our invert spinning forward and backwards. This is a really common one where you don't know if you're spinning forwards or backwards. And honestly, when you're learning pole for the first time and when you're upside down, nothing makes sense. You don't even know which one's your left leg and right leg. So remember that when you're spinning forwards, that you start with your outside leg backwards. When you're spinning backwards, you start with your outside leg forward. That's going to help you push off and push backwards, whichever way that you are spinning. Now, the other thing that's really good about technology these days is that obviously you can film yourself and see if you are spinning forwards or backwards or not. So remember that you can always practice while you film things, and always just revise on things and see what you can improve on, and etc. Now, the next common mistake is our ankle grab into an invert and which leg to bring down first. Now, if you're still practicing your invert from an ankle grab, remember always inside leg down first. If you bring your outside leg down first, you are going to fall out of it very quickly. So your positioning of your inside leg and also your outside leg is going to be very crucial. So remember, start off with identify which one's your inside and outside before you get into the move. I'm starting with my right armpit, meaning my right leg is going to come down in that invert. Ankle grab, my inside leg, so the one behind, is going to drop down. If you start with your outside, you're going to just fall out of it as such. So just always make sure you bring your inside leg down first. Now, when you are doing your inverts, another very important thing to know is you can always start with your straddles very close. If you come into a very wide straddle, like anything in life, when you're putting something on a scale of like 2 scales, if you're in a very wide sort of stance, then things are gonna get really wobbly. The closer you are to the center of gravity, things are gonna feel much more stable. So meaning, when you're coming into a very wide straddle, you're going to lose your balance very quickly unless you're strong and you feel quite secure in it. So remember, you can always start in a very narrow straddle, and then you can work your way out of it slowly. So what I mean is, when you come into your straddle initially, just park your legs very close. Then when you start to feel secure, then you can come into a wide straddle. So remember, if you want to try that from an ankle grab again, bring your leg really close, straight leg close towards your face, then try working through your straddles. I'm coming into an ankle grab, I'm keeping this leg really close to me, and I'm bringing my outside leg close. Now, although this is not the most appealing, this is obviously a very good starting point to start working on your straddles. Then you can widen your legs very slowly. Now, next tip is to make sure that you're not swinging your leg up in your straddle. Now, this is another common one that I see time to time, and this is a very dangerous entry into your straddle. So I really talk against this, because once you learn how to kick up into it, this is going to be a very dangerous one. Maybe you might pull a muscle, you might get injured. So please make sure that you're not running into your straddle. Now, although this is a really easy way to get up and you'll get a lot of momentum through it, it is a very compromising position and you can get injured from it as well. So please make sure that you do not kick up into it as such. Very abrasively, that is. Now, the last tip I have for you today is ensuring that you are working on your entries and exits. Now, this is another common one where, firstly, not very pretty when you're just kind of jumping into it, and when you're exiting out of it, just flopping out. Not pretty, nor is it safe. A lot of people can get injured from just flopping out of it as well. So make sure that you keep controlling your entries and exits as much as you can at your best ability. So with control, you're pulling through. Remember, pull the pole out of the ceiling. Think about squeezing your lats as much as you can. You're pulling your elbows in. And when you're controlling it out, you're gently tipping your head back, then stepping out with control. Well done. So that is all the tips and common mistakes. A little mindset tip I have for you today is about the straddle. Now, the straddle is a very, very hard trick. I mean, in what world do we go upside down with our feet off the ground on a daily basis? Now, I did mention this when we started working on our ankle grabs, but the straddle is another hurdle or another wall that a lot of people tend to get stuck on as well. So I want you to just picture this. When you are working on your straddles, when I started, I did not get it straight away. It took me months and months of training, and for some people, it could even take years. And you know what? That is all part of the journey as well. There are so many different moves, there are so many different tricks that you do not have to go upside down. You can always go through my beginner pole trick tutorial series and always brush up all the moves that require just being upright. I am not always an advocate for always going upside down, although I am always upside down, quite frankly. But then I do not always think that going upside down is the whole solution and the whole entire goal for doing pole dancing, because there are so many facets to pole. You can work on your flexibility, you can work on your dance, and of course when you're working on your tricks, and if that's just your thing, then you can always work on try to make that execution nice and make it look fluid. So remember that inverts are not always going to be something for everyone. You do not have to get the invert if you feel like you're not ready for it yet. You might just need a lot of conditioning, you might need a lot of practice, but you'll definitely get there if you keep consistently practicing and if you really love pole dancing so much and this is your passion as well. Remember, always just be kind to yourself and that everything is a journey, and just have fun at the end of the day. It's always about how you get there and not about the destination. Thank you so much for joining me in the straddle invert or chopper tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you in the very next tutorial. Bye! Yes. Can I help you? Oh. Have I done it from the ankle grab? Oh, I forgot that conditioning.